In Mexico, luchadores frequently come from massive extended families. Fathers pass their personas, their names, and their masks to their sons or nephews, and it's something normal. But the fans don't treat these younger guys like rookies. They view them as a direct continuation of the character and their heroes. Fans expect the sons to draw the same crowds, win the same titles, and even face the same enemies. And it is because of this heavy pressure that second or third generation luchadores often fail. They crack under the comparison and often fade into the lower cards of independent circuits. But Juan Manuel González Barrón did not fail. He actually surpassed his father's status. Today I want to talk to you about a man who turned a simple mask into the most beautiful máscara in Lucha Libre. And not only that, he backed the visual with the career of a legend. But I cannot talk about the Junior without first talking about the Señor Manuel González Rivera, also known as Dr. Wagner. And you gotta know that he was an absolute monster in the ring. He was born in Zacatecas but moved to the region of La Laguna when he was very young. In this area, the city of Torreón, Coahuila has a very specific school of wrestling called La Escuela Lagunera. And it is well known that this school produces tough, technically vicious fighters. Dr. Wagner Sr. learned his craft in this environment and he became a huge box office draw in the 1960s and 70s. Because of his complexion, he knew he could not rely on crazy acrobatics. So he ended up relying on creating fear. He famously teamed up with El Ángel Blanco to create a villainous duo known as the Ola Blanca, the White Wave. And the name was based on the gear that they would use often. And honestly, their presentation was brilliant. Most luchadores wore colorful masks with a lot of ornaments, but Dr. Wagner Sr. just wore a simple white mask. But this helped him look clinical and merciless. Even though he was using the name of a doctor, he was a ruthless rudo, tearing the opponent's masks and breaking the rules. Him and El Ángel Blanco dominated the tag team division for years. As a tag team, they became so huge that they eventually became tag team champions, defeating El Rayo del Jalisco and El Santo. And in 1968, El Solitario, probably the favorite luchador of your favorite luchador, joined them. But this alliance wouldn't last long, and given the increased popularity of El Solitario, he became a técnico. This led to the other two members of La Ola Blanca to turn on him, and a rivalry started which lasted many years. And finally, on December 1st, 1985, in the city of Monterrey in front of 15,000 fans, El Solitario and Dr. Wagner face each other in a mask versus mask match, máscara contra máscara. And this is the type of high-profile mask versus mask matches that we rarely see nowadays. In the end, El Solitario defeated Dr. Wagner and took his mask. And sadly, just 4 months after, on April of 1986, El Solitario died after some medical complications. But now I want to tell you an eerie part of this story. It was well known that El Solitario and El Ángel Blanco, the other two members of the Ola Blanca, were really close friends. So much so that they had made a pact in which they agreed that they would leave this world at the same time. And well, a few weeks after the death of El Solitario, Dr. Wagner and El Ángel Blanco alongside other luchadores were in a car heading to Monterrey. During the car ride, El Ángel Blanco was telling them that the previous night he had dreamt of El Solitario. In this dream, El Solitario reminded him of their pact, but El Ángel Blanco answered that he was not ready yet and he had still a lot of things to do in this life. But not long after this story, their vehicle was involved in a tragic car crash. In this accident, El Ángel Blanco ended up dying. Dr. Wagner survived, but he suffered severe spinal damage and was left paralyzed. La Ola Blanca was over, and he was never able to wrestle after that. His son Juan Manuel had decided to continue the family business just that same year. And just 20 days before the accident, he had decided to put on the white mask and call himself Dr. Wagner Jr. This timing was also eerie, but this meant that the world of Lucha Libre has never been without a Dr. Wagner since the character debuted. Dr. Wagner Jr. started wrestling on April 7, 1986. His father and Gran Marcus were his trainers. He started in the promotion that Rey Mendoza helped found, the Universal Wrestling Association, the UWA. Wagner Jr. learned how to work the crowd and handle the physical demands of the ring. He often teamed with his real-life brother, Silver King. That's right, the Wagner dynasty also includes one of the most underrated luchadores in Mexico's history. Silver King was also known as the third Black Tiger in Japan, and many of you may know him as Ramses from Nacho Libre. By 1983, Dr. Wagner Jr. moved to the Consejo Mundial de Lucha Libre. the CMLL. You have to remember that Salvador Luterot founded CMLL in the 1930s, and it is the oldest promotion in Mexico, operating mainly out of the Arena México. And they own another arena in Mexico City and also one in Guadalajara and another in Puebla. In the CMLL, Dr. Wagner Jr. formed a new version of La Ola Blanca to honor his father. This was a way of telling the fans that his Rudo lineage was still alive. And this was great, but he still needed his own style to truly stand out. You probably already know that a lot of fans misunderstand Lucha Libre, even in Mexico. They watch it and they think it's all about fast springboards, suicide dives, and acrobatics. They expect to see smaller athletes doing flying scissors kicks and a lot of acrobatics. The domestic reality of Lucha Libre is much broader. The sport has submission experts like Blue Panther and hard-hitting brawlers like Black Terry. Wagner Jr. knew he would get lost in the crowd if he just tried to be another high flyer, something his father never even tried. So what he did is that he leaned into his father's geographic roots. Of course, he embraced the Escuela Lagunera that I mentioned previously. This northern style from places like Torreón and Chihuahua is grounding and punishing. Is the exact opposite of aerial acrobatics you see in central Mexico. That's why when you saw Wagner Jr., you would see him wrestle like a heavyweight brawler. He abandoned the dives because he knew he would never be the best at doing them. His offense relied on heavy strikes, stiff suplexes, and crushing power bombs. He would pick opponents up and drop them directly on their necks with the Wagner driver. He would hit the ropes hard and take their heads off with a running lariat. He kept his opponents on the mat and cut off their aerial attacks with sheer physical force. And of course, this made him stand out during his time in CMLL. Whenever he wrestled aerial artists, you could see a clear clash of styles. He even won the CMLL World Light Heavyweight Championship, and fans remember his bloody feuds with technicos like Atlantis and brawls with heavy hitters like LA Park, the original La Parca. He proved his Lagunero style was the perfect counter to the high-flying style that was prominent during that time. And he also knew that this same style would work internationally. That's why he took a chance and flew to Japan. And as you probably know, the Japanese fans value strong style, which involves stiff kicks and unpulled punches. I'm sure you've seen at least a couple of Japanese wrestling clips and thought that looked real. And as you can imagine, Wagner's style fit perfectly into that Japanese style of wrestling. His Japanese tours led to him being established as a worldwide talent. During the 90s, he faced many Japanese superstars like Yoshin Thunder Liger, and he even participated in the New Japan Pro Wrestling's Best of the Super Juniors tournament. And in 1989, he won the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Championship with his partner Kendo Kashin. These tours and the few updates that made their way back to Mexico during that time proved something to the Mexican fans. Dr. Wagner Jr. wasn't planning on writing on his family name. He was an elite worker who could adapt his psychology to different cultures. And once he came back to CMLL, his name carried a different weight. While he kept building his legacy in the 2000s, Lucha Libre kept evolving. The sport had suffered bad economic periods with half-empty arenas, which is something that seems to happen every so often in the sport in Mexico. But globalization and social media caused an international boom. Lucha Libre masks started appearing in sporting events and movies all around the world. And this fascination with Lucha Libre changed things in Mexico City. Arena México used to be for the local working class, but it suddenly became a massive tourist attraction. Double-decker buses unloaded tourists outside the arena. Tour guides told them to choose between the good guys and the bad guys. The front rows filled up with tourists and celebrities recording the matches on their phones. Traditional fans stayed in the cheaper seats in the upper stands. If you started watching CMLL in the last few years, you'll recognize that this is even more pronounced nowadays. And of course, this brought more money to the business. Promoters raised ticket prices. A 50 pesos ticket was now 350. Good seats reached 600 pesos, and premium tickets started costing upwards of 1,000 pesos. One could say that Wagner Jr. noticed this shift. He was main eventing cards in CMLL, but he wanted more. He understood the traditional confines of CMLL could not hold his ambitions, and that if he wanted more, he would have to move on. In 2009, he left CMLL and signed with a direct rival, Lucha Libre AAA. And as many fans recognized, AAA was the opposite of CMLL. They used pyrotechnics, massive video screens, and American television presentations. In other words, CMLL was traditional Lucha Libre, while AAA was basing its product on what the WWE was doing. They focused heavily on elaborate storylines, and drama. When he first appeared in AAA, fans went crazy. One of the biggest names in CMLL was now working for the competition. This environment changed Dr. Wagner Jr.'s career. He went from a respected technical wrestler to a pop culture phenomenon. He became the top attraction for AAA and generated a wave of fanaticism called Wagnermania, which led to him calling his fans Wagnermaniacos. He won the AAA Mega Championship 3 times and carried the company's box office for many years. On June 13, 2009, at Triplemania 17, he faced El Mesías, who you may know as Mil Muertes, to win the Mega Championship for the first time. This was an all-out war that lasted almost 40 minutes and is considered by many as the best lucha in Triplemania history. So I recommend you watch it, and it's available right here on YouTube. As a main eventer in the company, he perfected his character work on AAA television. He knew physical dominance was not enough anymore. He understood he now had to command the microphone. What he did is that he developed a famous routine. He would pace the ring with an arrogant swagger, grab the microphone, and with a deep voice shout, "En esta casa y con mi gente se me respeta." Then he would raise his arms and chant, "Bien, bien, 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 bien." Tens of thousands of fans would chant it back at him. They loved it, but this also created a strange situation. Wagner was officially presented and wrestling as a rudo. You could see him often breaking the rules and using a very strong style. But his charisma was so powerful that fans rejected the narrative of him being a rudo. They would cheer for him louder than the actual heroes of the match. So he basically became an anti-hero of Lucha Libre. In 2017, Triplemania 25 was going to take place. And to celebrate such an important event, AAA decided to give the fans a match that is controversial still to this day. Dr. Wagner Jr. had agreed to bet his mask against Psycho Clown, the new face of the company. Fans, of course, were not happy because they could see the writing on the wall. Facing a veteran against a promising star led to a predictable outcome. And still, the Wagnermaniacos were still hopeful that his hero would come on top. And this was because they couldn't believe that what was then known as the most beautiful máscara in Lucha Libre could fall. Once we get to Triplemania 25, Dr. Wagner Jr. was 52 years old, and Psycho Clown represented the younger generation. He was wildly popular and wanted to cement his own legacy. Over 20,000 fans packed the Arena Ciudad de México. Everyone knew what was at stake. Losing this match meant the permanent destruction of an aura. It was a bloody and agonizing fight. No one wanted it to end. Wagner threw stiff Lagunero power bombs, and Psycho Clown fought back with desperate resilience. In the final moments, Psycho Clown caught Wagner in a sunset flip powerbomb. He pinned Wagner's shoulder to the mat, and the referee counted 1, 2, 3. Dr. Wagner Jr. had lost his mask. What fans feared had come to pass. The arena went into an absolute shock. Losing a mask usually destroys a luchador's ticket sales permanently. Sure, they get booked a lot the first couple of months after losing their mask because people want to see the luchador without their mask. But the mystique quickly vanishes and is replaced by an aging face. That's why many luchadores fade into obscurity after losing their mask. But Juan Manuel handled the loss with dignity. He didn't run or protest or pretend to have never lost the mask. That day after the match, his son stood by his side in the middle of the ring with tears in their eyes. Wagner untied the laces at the back of his mask. He pulled the torn mascara from his face, but instead of giving it to Psycho Clown, he gave it to his son, hijo de Dr. Wagner Jr. In front of 20,000 fans, Wagner Jr. told Psycho Clown that his son was giving him the mask because eventually he would be the one to take Psycho Clown's mask. And fortunately for us, the story of Dr. Wagner Jr. doesn't end there. He proved to every fan that he was much more than just an epic mask. Immediately, he adapted his presentation. He dropped the doctor title because he was no longer wearing a surgical mask. And that's when he rebranded himself as Rey Wagner, King Wagner. With the new name came a new arrogant persona. But even with all the changes he made, he kept his famous catchphrases and still demanded respect around his people. This reinvention worked perfectly, and Wagner Jr. kept headlining events all over Mexico. He even wrestled Blue Demon Jr. at Triplemania 27 in 2019. This was a hair versus mask match, máscara contra cabellera, and it was a match he lost, but just because he got hit in the head with a cinder block. Still to this day, Rey Wagner travels all over the country and beyond, giving his fans the chance to meet him and see him wrestle. The aura of the mask was lost, but the aura of the persona was intact. The mascara became an icon because the man behind the mask was an icon, not the other way around. In 2026, Rey Wagner has made it known that he's in his last years as a wrestler, but the legacy his father and brother left and the one he built are being carried on by his sons and nephews. Dr. Wagner Jr. definitely connects different eras of Mexican Lucha Libre. He took over the legacy after his father suffered a terrible car accident, and he used the rough style of La Escuela Lagunera to fight the acrobats in Arena México. When the sport globalized and television demanded larger characters, he evolved. He adapted into a character that made arenas and enemies tremble, and he was able to command thousands of people with a single phrase. He lost the mask that defined his family for half a century, but he proved that the magic was in the men wearing it. Juan Manuel González Barrón, Dr. Wagner Jr., wore a heavy crown in the shape of a mask, and he became the idol of thousands of fans who will forever chant the words he once dared to speak.
En esta casa y con mi gente se me respeta.
I hope you like learning more about Dr. Wagner Jr. and probably this will help you to better understand the history of El Galeno del Mal and El Hijo del Dr. Wagner Jr. Let me know in the comments what part of his history was the most interesting to you. My name is Eric and you can follow me to learn more about the history of Lucha Libre, and I will see you in the next video.